when that moment is coming, but you know you've worked really hard and you do not want to let your team or the school or your coach or yourself down. Growth happens when you're really uncomfortable and you might not think you're qualified, but the leader ahead of you, it believes in you and knows you have the talent and character to do so.
Welcome to Corporate Competitor, presented by Forbes Books, the podcast where executives share how the lessons they learned playing sports shaped their leadership. With me for today's episode is Caroline Linton, longtime CMO of Pure Barre, where she helped grow the brand into one of the most recognized names in boutique fitness. Before her marketing career, Caroline was a defensive specialist at UC Irvine's Division I volleyball team. After a major ACL injury, she turned to Pure Barre for recovery and ultimately found her calling. Today, she's bringing that same drive and focus to her new executive role with Perspire Sauna Studio, where she oversees the national marketing efforts for 100 plus locations. We're going to dive into how sports shaped her leadership and the mindset she carries into every chapter of her career since. Make sure to check out corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/notes for my favorite quotes and reflection questions to help you apply today's insights. Caroline, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dawn. Great to be here.
I have to tell you, in the 250 episodes that we've recorded, we've been quite proud to have done that many episodes on this subject. We have not had two Notre Dame football players. We've not had two Alabama football players. But you are our second anteater women's volleyball player from UC Irvine. Like, what are the odds that we get two from the same sport, same school, even though you're separated by a number of years? The odds are too great.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be one of the first, and then, of course, have to throw out a little zot out there for all the anteaters.
Good. I don't know how many anteater followers we have, but they're all probably zotting it right now. That's great. That's awesome. So, yes, I mean, we actually had Shannon Yusi, who played a number of years before you, and who runs a fantastic financial services firm out there in California, in episode 155. So it was kind of cool to now be able to bring you to our listeners. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Now, I have to tell you, one of my favorite people that I've had the chance to work with over the years was Stephen Covey. And Stephen Covey used to talk about begin with the end in mind. But you take it a little further than most people I know, because one of the things I read about you is that you end each day in reflection about the day, what could have gone better, and what strategies you could shift. This idea of like when you're at the end, you're actually thinking about what you can do differently. Can you walk me through what that personal debrief looks like? I'd love listeners to be able to think about that as an important part of your routine.
Absolutely. And it's really quick. It's at the end of the day, the very end, when you have that moment of quiet before your head's hitting the pillow. But it's a really quick reflection of what went well today. You know, what could have gone better? What were the wins? What were some of the challenges that came about that could turn into an opportunity? And then I kind of just go through each bucket of life as a mom and wife, in my career as a CMO, as a leader for my family and friends. How did I show up? And for me, it's reflecting really quickly on the past, preparing for the future. So as you're reflecting, you're also taking a look at, what does this week look like? What does tomorrow look like? What is coming up in the next few months that I need to start now? All while the biggest challenge there is while being present where your feet are. So much,
Or where your head is, because you're going
yeah,
to hit the
where your
pillow.
head is.
Right.
You can be stuck in planning for the future or reflecting on the past, but it's a balancing act of reflecting, what can we do better and get better at, and how do we take that and plan for the future. And my husband and I, we bring that into parenting as well. So it's a simple question for our kids at the end of the night, bedtime routine. What was your favorite part of today? Was there a moment that was challenging or tough? And, just having them start this process of not going through the motions, but taking a look. What did you love about today? What was that win? And what was something else that might have been a little tough that we can get better at or go, build on from there. So.
Is that where it started for you? Was it something that began in childhood, or where does it start for you?
I think for me, I've always been a planner, but it really was a couple things when I, was elevated into a leadership role where now I have a responsibility to manage a whole team. And it became really important to take a look at what can I do better as a leader so I can remove barriers so my team can excel. How can we collectively reach our goals? And then the other side was when I became a mom
Mm.
because when, you can read the parenting books and read up on how
None
to
of it's
do
real.
this, but oh my goodness, you learn as you go and you need to figure out what did we do well? What went a little awry and, how can we show up better tomorrow?
You ask yourself this series of questions. Is there an example of someplace where the answer you give yourself maybe changes tomorrow for you?
Yes. I think, every day as a planner, you have a plan, right? You have your top 3 things, your biggest things you wanna accomplish, but the day takes you where it takes you, and things come up where you have to pivot, and you really have to stay patient and steady, and I think that's what's most important about this reflection is that, you think you've had a really tough day, but hey, take a step back, take the emotions out. What are we working on? How do
Mm,
we work through this? And I think for me, it's so important because you could just go, and it can be really stressful, whatever it is, whatever bucket of life you're focusing on. But if you just take a quick moment, even if it's not every day, every week, where you're slowing down and just having that reflection of, okay, hey, my little win today was this, or my moment was this. Great, right? Here's what was tough that I would like to work on for myself, for my team, for my family, the buckets. So I think it's simple because it's not like you don't need to write it down because the pressure of getting it down on paper is no, just roll through it. And that's why we keep it simple to 2 questions for our kids, and they know it's coming. So sometimes they pop up and say,
they prepped it?
my favorite moment was this, right? So
Right. I love it.
team meetings for our marketing team, it's also, starting out with some of those wins as well, because, the team is collectively doing so much work and putting in the time and effort. So it's always great to be able to think about what were those wins, and they can be big towards a larger goal, or they can be small, or it can be personal too. I definitely, as a leader, want to make sure that they know, hey, we're in it for the business and the brand and the goal. But I also want to make sure they know that I'm there
Mm,
to help, be that guide or in any way a support for their personal goals as well.
love it. I read a quote from you. You were talking about wanting to be remembered as someone who is resilient, dependable, and warm. Now, resilient and dependable, I hear that all the time. But I don't hear a lot of C-level executives say, I want to be remembered as someone who was warm. Um, where does that come from, and what do you mean by that?
I mean, I definitely want to be remembered as a strong leader. I set pretty straight expectations of, hey, we have our goals and we want to reach them and we want to pivot and strategize. But I also know that this is a people business in what we
Mhm.
do. And I want to make sure that people feel seen. That's the same level of service and that warmth that we want all the way down to the studio level, that we want our teams to make sure that our members and people are coming in and they're going to many different places, but you're going to remember the places where people made you feel seen. They
Mm.
made you feel warm. So for me personally, that's an important piece of, leading with empathy and the leader that I'd like to be remembered and the person I'd like to be remembered as.
What does it mean to make someone feel seen in an environment like, the places Pure Barre, where we're gonna talk about for a little bit, and then your new role? What does it mean to make people feel seen?
It means having that personalized touch. So, meaning, we're getting to know you, we're getting to know what your preferences are. so that they're already, set before you get there. It's being, able to ask actual questions of, hey, what do you do outside of here for work? Oh, and getting to know you're getting ready for a marathon, or you just got a new puppy, or you're welcoming a little one, and that those little touch points. Everybody's day is so busy, but it might just be a simple question, a follow-up question. Hey, you told me about, your marathon that you're prepping for. How's that going? And it's that moment where that person's probably stopping and saying, "You remember that from a week ago? You probably see hundreds of customers and members coming through, but you remembered." Or if you say, "My knee's bothering me," or, "I just welcomed a little one." It's those personal little bits of remembering and storing that that I think really make a difference.
That's awesome. Yeah, we at our office, we have a director of first impressions, right? Someone who's, whose job is as people come in to like, and if they come in, if there's someone's gonna come in regularly, we find out what do they like. If they like Diet Coke, then there's a Diet Coke waiting for them on the table, right? I totally I get that, and I can see how, even in that environment that you're talking about, it can make such a difference. In those early days, as you're a new leader and you're digging in like this, are there some revelations, some things that came to you in breaking your day down that helped you in early become a better leader?
It did, because when you're stepping from maybe a associate role and you're going to manager and director and growing, you realize, I'm not the best leader in the room, and I need to figure out where I need to go. And in that reflection, you go, okay, who can I connect with? Where can I learn from? Where do we go from here? One of my favorite things is to just learn and grow and immerse. And I've had just the most fortunate opportunities to have the best mentors and be connected to various mentors with different backgrounds, and diving into different leadership books and learning about different philosophies. And it only got me there because it's that reflection of, okay, we need to immerse in different ways and different leadership styles, and then find the one that is most suitable to my character, and my background, so that I can apply it to the team. And then it's continually getting feedback from the team as well, right? So it's not ruling with the iron fist, but it's a collaborative effort so that they can feel that energy is a two-way street.
Oh, I love it. The goal of this podcast, and one of the things that I think draws all of our guests together, is a history in sports, at myriad different levels, right? But yours included being a D1 athlete at UC Irvine. But when we think back to your time as a volleyball player, um, was there a moment, a big win, tough loss, that maybe taught you a leadership lesson, maybe taught you something that you still think of today?
So at UC Irvine, we're not a football school. So sometimes we walked onto courts. We might have been that unknown team, possibly the underdog, but it was going in there and believing that we can win. And I just remember, a few games where we're in the fifth set of the match. That's the tiebreaker game. It's only
Right. It's
15
game
points.
7.
Yeah, and it really is. You have to get to the rule of thumb is first to eight, right? You're at the halfway point, first to eight, you're going to get a good lead. And regardless of the score, though, there were times we were down 8 points,
Mm.
down in that fifth set. And I just remember, there's a couple matches where one of our teammates, jump serving, mind you, coming back and just scraping and scraping and scraping and coming back. So it was that level of staying steady under pressure and to win that game, right? And just, I remember there were games where I was at the service line coming off of the bench because I was a walk on, and just really appreciated any playing time that I could get on the court. But I just remember there were times where I served multiple balls in a row, right? So again, staying steady under pressure. One more example, our coach, Charlie Brand, the way that he, got you ready for those moments, as a freshman, or if you were coming off the bench, you know what he would do? He would put you in off the bench at game point.
Like in in in
At game
in
point. So
real
whether
games.
in real games, because if you weren't a starter, that type of pressure, you need to show up and you're not going to let your team down. And I think that those scenarios and that experience that he put me in personally, it reflects because you know what, in work situations in life, pressure is going to happen and it's how do you handle it? Do you crumble or do you take a deep breath and step up to the challenge? So I really appreciated how he set us all up to be able to handle that pressure.
That is, masterful, dangerous, right? 'Cause, what if you put somebody in game point, in a key situation and they flounder or they maybe they crumble? What do you but I assume he wouldn't have put you in there if he didn't believe you were ready.
Right, right. He put you in because he had the confidence. You had practiced this
Did you
and
know it was
practiced.
coming?
No, but but the best part is you're always ready on the bench, right?
Right.
You don't know when that moment is coming, but you know you've worked really hard and you do not want to let your team or the school or your coach or yourself down. So I think for how Charlie approached, creating that mental toughness was he prepared you. You were ready. So it was just your job. Are you deciding to show up today and you need to believe in yourself to get there?
One of the things that's so great about that is that it's obviously a real key tenet of building a great team, and I've been studying teams forever, as have you, is the ability to have a bench, right? And to know that you've got talent that you can lean into. Best way to develop your bench is sometimes to put him in really uncomfortable situations.
Absolutely. You just get really comfortable with being uncomfortable and you go through that so much in life, but especially on the court, right? And different scenarios pop up, but I think going back, it's just the preparation that happened behind closed doors during practice that got us ready for that.
Do you, have you used any version of that in your leadership model? Like, how do you say, take a younger talent in your team, professionally and put them in that uncomfortable situation? Is there an example that that you might share?
Absolutely. So for myself as a leader, my goal is growth for my team. Whatever it is that they're letting me know as even as they're stepping into, if they're new to the role, is what is your career goal? So that this can be a foundation of where you want to go. And if they say, hey, I want to be a director or a VP of marketing or a CMO,
Mm.
great. That is good for me to know because guess what? There's going to be times where I'm going to prepare you and you're going to present portions of the pieces that I present because I believe in you. I know what your goals are, but I know we've gotten you ready. And they may be uncomfortable, but they know it's coming. It's not like I'm putting them on the spot, but they're preparing, to take the little pieces so that they can grow and have those moments where, I think growth happens when you're really uncomfortable and you might not think you're qualified, but the leader ahead of you, it believes in you and knows you have the talent and character to do so.
Boy, that's such a great line. Growth happens when you're uncomfortable. The truth is that's true of muscles, right? That's true of,
Mhm.
and that's true of us as humans and as you know, potential leaders. You know, when you think about all that you also had a lot of great experience, even in a little bit of a leadership role, in high school as a captain of your team. What did what did those early we've talked to a number of athletes who will point to a number of C-level executives who will point to captaincy as an early place where, they learned leadership that wouldn't have been taught to them until maybe they were 3 or 4 or 5 years into their career if they had waited to join some company that had a leadership development program. What did being a captain teach you?
That's a great question. I think it taught me really young, right? In the
Right.
teenage years of high school,
Yeah.
that everyone's having a different type of day, but we
Mm.
need to figure out how do we energize, motivate everyone to show up to be their best today, even if they may not be their best today. And because there's so many different types of personality on a big team, how do we get the personalities to buy in, to get along and work hard. And sometimes learning that at a younger age, that's tougher to get a big team together, right? And then to,
Well, because you have to it's hard to even get people sometimes to listen to you when you're young,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah.
And knowing that, hey, I'm the captain, a co-captain. I am not, again, ruling with the iron fist at all. I'm with you here, so that we can have fun, we can win together. But I think it teaches you a lot about how to get a lot of different people. People are different, they have different interests, and but they are here for that collective interest of volleyball. So how do we get people together and create that synergy?
Mm. So now in your roles that you've had, uh, how are you doing something similar? How do you hold people together? What are some of the things that you're doing there that are, um, I mean, obviously getting a chance to try to pull them together, recognize that everyone's having a different kind of day, and that you don't know where they've come from when they've arrived at work. How do you keep all that fresh and in mind? Is there something you do, some way that helps you lead?
I think so. For me, I'm going to go back to the warm and getting to know people. It's
Mm.
just getting to know what's happening outside of work, and for as an individual of them coming in, it's asking how, if I know they have a long commute, how was your commute? Hey, I
Mm.
know you're working on strength training. How's that going? Or hey, I know you have a lot of events coming up. How's that going? So individually, it's that piece of getting to know them. And then collectively as a whole, when we're having team meetings, it's giving them shout outs too, right? So we go through what needs to be done and, what we may have missed and how we need to get better. We definitely go through that and the opportunities and any issues, but it's also giving the highlight of, hey, giving them the shout out. And even if it's a personal shout out, hey, guess what? They completed their marathon. We had a team member over at Pure Bar who completed her 500th class. And I put that in the HQ chat and just it's such a big personal milestone for them to accomplish. So I think it's also just knowing what their personalities are like. People like to receive motivation differently, and it's just honestly at the end of the day getting to know them.
I wanna go back. You mentioned Coach Charlie earlier, right, at UC Irvine. He was recently inducted into the Irvine Athletics Hall of Fame. I thought that was pretty fun, and it was noted in his Hall of Fame induction that he was, quote, "the most interesting man." He was like the Dos Equis guy at UC Irvine Athletics. Most interesting man in the program. So I gotta know, like, what made this guy so interesting? What made him such a unique leader?
Okay, Charlie is a legend. He used to teach us the life skill, only Madonna has one name. You look people in the eye, give a strong handshake, and say your full name. But I almost feel like Charlie could be that person that just had, we say Charlie Brand, but if you say Charlie in volleyball, the majority of people know, but he's the most interesting person because he was one of the first students on the UC Irvine campus when they opened.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
he played basketball. He, just had an incredible tenure in the Orange County space of not only UC Irvine men's and women's volleyball, but at the high school level, winning state championships. He just so many different accolades. And then now he's a color commentator, a broadcaster for UC Irvine alongside Rob Aspero, who's been there for decades and, announced our games and a lot of the sports games. But I also think he's the most interesting person because he's not only such a respected coach, but as if you talk to people who played for him, he's an influential mentor. Charlie Brand wants you to win, not just in volleyball, but in life.
Mm,
My husband and I were there for his Hall of Fame inductee ceremony
mm.
alongside quite a few of our teammates that played at the same time I did and a few years previous as well. But just he teaches you the values of life. How are you going to be mentally tough on the court? How do you earn respect? How do you go from what you've taken here to have that discipline and consistency to continue? And he's warm. So I learned a
It's
part of
interesting.
that.
I was listening to all of that and I was
Yes,
thinking,
he's
warm, warm, warm.
exactly.
You know,
He really is. And also, he has a deep Hawaiian connection. So if you're looking for him on the sidelines broadcasting now, you'll see Charlie in his signature Hawaiian shirt.
research shows that 80% of us believe we have a book within us. But the number of people who follow through and do the work to create that book is far, far less. The reason is that the process can seem so overwhelming. And that is why I have partnered with Forbes Books to make the process easier for those of you who listen to this podcast and believe you have a story in you. So if you're ready to turn your leadership experience into your legacy, start your journey with us today at Forbes Books. Visit forbesbooks.com/Don to get started. By the way, born and raised in Hawaii. I was
Okay.
yeah, I was born on the Big Island, raised on Oahu, and so I get the
You
uh,
get
I,
it.
I get the shout out. That's awesome. Um, but this idea of him leading through warmth, but he also held you to really high standards.
Mhm.
How do you mix warmth and maybe every once in a while, a little smack on the backside that how do you like mix? I guess there's probably no HR director that would allow you to, but I had a few of those in football. But at the end of the day, how do you mix warmth and discipline?
I think he showed us on the court it's tough, right? You have discipline, you have very high expectations, and the thing that Charlie did is he set those expectations the minute you walked in the door freshman year or prior, right? So on the court, there's no time for the humor. It is all work. You are focusing, you are, making sure you're paying attention to the strategy, the pivots. You know your role and what you need to do to support the team. And then it was more the moments off the court, right? Where the warmth comes in. And, I still remember one of my most memorable trips was being able to go as a freshman to the UH trip, and getting onto the travel squad and then seeing, his love for the Hawaiian culture. And,
Right.
he was assistant coach at UH. So, just the synergy there. But on the court, you're showing up, right? You are showing up, and it's really the off the court where you're seeing more of the human connection. And that's the way that I lead too, is, hey, we're when we're working, and the expectations are really high. But outside of that, we're humans. So we're going to have that human connection as well.
That's pretty cool. You suffered a pretty tough injury, an ACL injury that was quite devastating for you, and it led to a pretty long recovery window. But I read something where you talked about out of that experience, you came up with your two least favorite words, right? Which are cannot. Um, for someone who's led in boardrooms and battled through injury, how do you coach your employees through moments where they believe they can't do something?
100%. The ACL surgery, I happened to tear it playing in a volleyball tournament because I thought after baby two, you could bounce right back and jump into it. And my body told me otherwise a little bit. But, I think everything happens for a reason. And that cannot was, I just want to, it really came because, trust me, having a little one under 1 years old, learning how to walk while you're really out of commission for a little bit. The cannot can creep in, but it's no, I can that's not a part of my vocabulary or our teams. We might choose we won't do it, but cannot is not a part of the vocabulary because it's, again, take a deep breath, a step back, and figure out what are we saying we cannot do and why are we saying that. Is it a confidence and belief thing that you don't believe that you can do it because maybe you haven't done it before? It's more of, I think people say I can't do it when they haven't done it yet, but it's actually just a new experience. You can do it, it's just new to you or to us. So we really just make sure, hey, what is it that we can't do or you feel like we can't do?
What was it during your rehab where what was it when that became really apparent to you that cannot is not going to work. Those are not going to be words you're going to use. What was there a moment where
There
you
was a moment. Think when people get injured, it's the doing the exercise that caused the injury. For me, it was jumping and landing on one foot. And when my physical therapist said it's time, because he knows I've gotten there to the point where I physically can do it, and now it's just the mental side of me getting through and overcoming myself saying I cannot do it and telling myself I can do it, I will do it, and you'll do great. You can do this. And it's just so simple. You're saying to yourself, you can do this. I remember that day. It was like 6 a.m. in the in the physical therapy center, and just that nervousness of, okay, here we go. Here we go.
and you deciding that the words you were going to say was I can do this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I can do
You're
this. I've got this.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, if you talk to anybody who's dealt with injuries, it's that next moment where they have to do the thing that got them hurt. Um,
Yep.
yeah, it becomes really tough. Um, in your role as a chief marketing officer, when a campaign or an initiative hits a wall, right, where how do you lead your team through that moment without letting them use the words cannot, without letting that phrase creep into the discussion?
Yeah, since it's not necessarily a part of the vocabulary, we find a way, right? We don't quit on things. It might look more like let's pivot strategy, but let's take a look at what's working in the campaign or the project or the strategy, and what are some changes we can do to positively impact that initiative to steer us back into the right direction. Not everything is going to go as we thought it would, and I think that's the beauty of marketing and A/B testing and seeing what does work. But it's stopping and taking a look at some of that data of, hey, what element of this did work? So let's focus on that and let's pivot the other element of it and change a few things there and keep marching forward. Um, you know,
We can't it's human nature, right? People say it all the time.
100%.
So in your efforts to lead a team, a professional team through this, those are not words that we use. You're asking them to defy human nature in their own way. How do you do that?
It's a mindset. So I think for the most part, because especially, I'm going to go back to new experiences. When something's new, I think, it is so, or you might have had a negative experience like the ACL injury. Your first gut instinct is to protect yourself
Right.
and in
Right.
the environment that you're in. But if you're in the presence of a leader or a team that you feel safe, right? Creating that safety and ultimately trust, like, hey, we can do this. We have the parameters and the structure to be able to accomplish this. Here's the roadmap. We're not going to do this overnight. There's no way. It's just like practicing for a big match coming up. You have to break it down into manageable steps, and that trust, the belief, the check-ins, and hitting those milestones along the way to get your team there.
I love it. You obviously have had a pretty fantastical career. It's pretty amazing what you've achieved in a reasonably short amount of time. But is there something that you wish you'd known early that you think knowing it today has been helpful, but you wish you'd known it 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
Yes, I think I have 2 for this one too, but number 1, I really wish the day 1 of, post-grad and career, somebody stopped and said, "It's about the people." So you are who you surround yourself with. So it's
Mm,
be the least experienced person in the room so that you can learn and listen, go
mm,
proactively find and connect with mentors and get comfortable being uncomfortable. I mentioned, but I just had the most fortunate experience having the most impactful mentors in my life. I'm giving Sherry Tennille a shout out here. But I hope that people can have that type of mentor for their career like I did, because that just really helps, with so many aspects of your whole career.
be the least experienced person in the room. and be good with it.
Yes.
It's
That's
funny
what we
because so
learned.
often early we feel like we're desperately having to prove our we have to prove ourselves. We have to prove that we belong, and so we don't want to go be that place where our voice might not be heard because we're so inexperienced.
Absolutely. I think one of the most beautiful things is you never stop learning. I tell my kids this all the time. For my marketing team, we have a book list and we book list podcast. I'm going to add this one on the podcast list now too.
Thank you.
But we have a list, right? So we never stop learning and we talk about what was our favorite for your career personally and why. And in addition to everything that's out there that we can absorb through reading and learning and hearing on podcasts and going on webinars, technology is evolving so rapidly, and consumer behavior is changing so rapidly too, for how people search for things and find
Yeah,
things. So it's so important for us to collectively stay informed. So the second thing would be never stop learning. I tell my
yeah.
kids that all the time. I say I am however old I am, but you'll never stop learning. And that's the beauty of it. There's so much information out there.
So number one, be the least experienced person in the room, and then listen and grow. And number two, never stop learning.
Yep. Those are the
Awesome.
two.
Those would be the two things that the advice you wish you'd gotten early. Um, there was an interview that you did previously in which you talked about the full circle moments are your favorite things to experience because, especially as a mom of two, have you had a moment recently, maybe with your team at Pure Bar or with your new venture with Perspire Sauna Studio, where you recognized in real time that everything you've worked for, everything that you've set out to do, has actually in some ways come full circle?
Yes, this one's going to be a Pure Bar moment. So as a marketer, the thing that you're constantly thinking of and striving for is brand awareness.
Hmm.
How do we get more people to see the brand, not just in their hometown, but where they are, and be a part of not just in between home and work, but also in their leisure time. We want to be known and recognized. And so I was on a trip with my family. And for me personally, I love to live and breathe and really immerse myself into the brand that I work with. So that means taking classes, understanding the member and seeing it from the member point of view. But I was on that trip and I was on my way to go take class at the local studio. And, I had a shirt with a really tiny Pure Bar logo on it. And I hear across the lobby, the hotel lobby, somebody say, "You do Pure Bar?" And I stopped in my tracks. I'm not in the mode of, I'm not sure who saw me or what is happening. I didn't even think because the logo is so small on my shirt. And I met a member from the East Coast that I completed 1,500 classes at Pure Bar. She was gushing about the studio owners, the studio community. And that was the full circle moment of, hey, the work we're doing at headquarters, the work that the franchisees, the studio team members, the teachers are doing to impact lives across the world and across the nation, that was a big full circle. And the marketing, the brand awareness of this member being able to see this tiny little logo on a shirt from across the hotel
And respond and
and
actually jump in.
respond and be so
Right.
excited, to have that brand loyalty and affinity to run across the lobby and figure out if she was right.
Now, by the way, when you go to these, when you're trying to experience it as a local, if you will, I assume you're not letting them know you're a corporate leader.
I let the studio owner know because if there's a way that I can meet with them while I'm there, but really the front desk typically doesn't know, and they'll ask questions, and I'll let them know, hey, I'm visiting from California, and if it comes up, I let them know, but I don't want them to get nervous or
Right.
anything like that. It's more of I want to see how they're welcoming and chat with them and how the teachers are teaching class. And, one of the most important things as we open more locations across the system is that consistency of how we deliver our product and service.
Mm.
And then it's truly seeing what's
Yeah.
happening in the studio before class.
Yeah.
Right. My new venture at Perspire, it's what's happening as new clients are coming in and checking in. And what I love to hear on the Perspire side is, the banter at the front desk, that personalization, and, at those simple touch points even after as well. So I really do love making sure that it's not just one location in my hometown, but I'm
Right.
seeing and visiting across the nation how things are going, and then
Anytime
asking
in
the
the room.
team, how is it going? Is there
Right.
anything that we're at headquarters that we can do to support you and
To
what
make
your
you better.
team's doing?
Yeah, that is because too often, I do a fair amount of work in the franchise world, and too often there's that us versus them feel,
Right.
right? Where, but I guess that may be true in almost any company, right? Where there's a headquarters that might be, it feels like forever away, and and they don't know what it's like to be out here, and so I think that's pretty powerful. I was reading some things. What mentorship's a big piece for us. We really believe that's where some of the greatest things happen. But you mentioned that your maternal grandmother and your paternal grandfather were your greatest mentors. What was it about them? What qualities of theirs have stayed with you?
Yes, and gosh, this one is so personal, but it was their resilience, their grit, their determination, and their energy. So to bring your family across, to a new place, just so you know that they could have the opportunity that they have here, and yet along that whole journey, in all of my memories of both of them, my grandma, she is over 90 years old, and she has a herniated disc, but you would never know because she
Mm.
shows up. She is so strong, overcomes challenges, is that warm person, but has those high expectations. So a lot of that comes into how I lead and I am as a person. And then
Mm.
my paternal grandfather, he was an agriculturalist before he
Mhm.
came over here. So I just have the fondest memories of the backyard, the garden. And the one thing that I watched him do is, planting these seeds, right? You don't see it right away, but you have to stay consistent and be disciplined. And from there, these great all the tomatoes, the bell peppers, all of the different things, the flowers. I don't have a green thumb, so I did not inherit the green thumb. But just the patience, the discipline, the consistency. And then I didn't add in that podcast, but my mom, that resilience to be in the middle of those generations and have the resilience. She taught me hospitality. She always said, in the things that you do, even getting somebody a cup of their favorite coffee makes a difference. And
Uh-huh.
I still don't understand how she was able to juggle all the things that she had going on, working, three kids. She drove me to every single practice and showed up to every single game and tournament, right? So I think it's that resilience, the hospitality, so much. I learned so much growing up.
And now you're the mother of two young athletes. How do you approach? I mean, I love the nighttime discussions. That's pretty cool. How do you approach teaching leadership and perseverance to your kids based on your own sports journey?
Yes, we have a few rules. So my husband was a pro athlete. He played baseball at UC Irvine and then in the pros as well, in the minor leagues for the Diamondbacks and the Cleveland Guardians, right? So we have a few rules because they're so young. One, it's play hard,
Hmm.
have fun, keep learning, and be a good teammate. And
Mm.
and that those, it's like it's a handful, so it's really ingrained and easy to learn. But we always let them know because when athletes are so young, it's really easy to focus on their individualized contribution or their performance, right? But it's also having that team mentality, something we learned in my playing days, and just, hey, you're going to go give a high five to your teammate when they do a good job. You're also going to go check in when they might have made a mistake and let them know, good try, and you've got this. It's those two things. You've got it, good try, and really teaching them that, hey, it's great when you
And
do
how
well.
old are they?
They're 7 and 4, so this is all for the 7-year-old. For the 4-year-old, it's a work in progress. He's so
Yeah.
young. But our oldest knows that, hey, those are the ground rules, and every game we don't ask, or criticize or and talk about the game in that moment after the game, we say, "Did you have fun? Did
I
you
love
play hard?
There you go.
You know, hey, I saw you helped out your teammate when they were having a tough time." Or, hey, you had a, you know, there's been moments where kids are human. They're having a hard morning. Sometimes the games are early, and it's letting them know the other line is you can do hard things. I know this is really tough for you, but you can do this. And even so, just showing them, hey, even on a hard day, you're going to give it your best effort. And we have them repeat the same thing. There's a, I don't remember the book, but at the end of it, it says like, I can, I will. So we have them have that same mental mindset of overcoming the cannot, right? It's so
Wow.
easy to, you know, have that. I cannot do this. I won't do this. I don't want to do this, right? So,
I need to go ahead and sign a contract right now to write the book for one. I'm sure your kids are going to turn out to be amazing, and I want to go ahead and get a deal in early while I can. I love it. Play hard, have fun, keep learning, be a great teammate.
yes.
That's pretty powerful. I want to ask a Perspire question here. I'd love to know a little more about um, why you think they've got such a special future.
I'm gonna go back to the synergy of the team, of the founder, and Lee's vision for this brand. And I think because he was such an innovator, 15, we just celebrated 15 years. So, innovator in the space of wellness, of that individualized wellness through the infrared sauna, through the red light therapy. But when I was meeting with the team, it's not only having that really strong vision as a founder and a phenomenal product that is going to positively impact and change people's lives. But it's also alongside that the leadership philosophy. And he and the team have such a strong leadership philosophy. I saw that. I see the momentum, and I wanted to, you know, I couldn't walk away from the opportunity to be a part of that momentum, to help be a part of this team, to collaborate and grow. So it was a tough decision because, you know, Pure Barre has been home and personally near and dear to my heart as a member, but I will always forever enjoy Pure Barre as a member in the studio. But truly, you know, great product, great vision, great leadership philosophy is what had me transition.
I love it. Caroline, thank you so much for all the attention to detail, the conversation. Remember, I'm signing up for the 7-year-old right now, so go ahead and let's get a deal on a cocktail napkin. But I'm grateful that you gave us the opportunity today, and that you were a corporate competitor with us.
Thank you so much, Dawn. Such a pleasure and honor to be here. And I'm going to go back to the episode where the other anteater was in there, and send that
155.
to our episode 155.
That's
I'll be
right.
sending that to all of our anteaters.
That's it. We need more anteater followers. That's awesome. Caroline, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow, what a high energy conversation. I can imagine how fantastic it must be to be in Caroline's presence as she's leading a team. Boy, I got to tell you, I'm signing that 7-year-old for a book. That's going to be pretty amazing one day. But there were some great takeaways for me. One, the entire idea that warm was one of the words that she wanted to be known for, right? And that discussion around what warm meant. That in order to be warm, you have to be conscious of that in your leadership style. And the key to that for her as a chief marketing officer is that you have to know what people are doing outside of work. You have to be aware of what's happening and realize that everybody comes to work differently every day. And there are things you might need to ask instead of asking just about work, maybe asking about the drive-in or whatever it might be. Ask how those things went. And then more importantly, care about the answer, right? It's not just about asking, it's about caring. And she learned that obviously from her college coach. What a fantastic leader he must have been. But the idea that he also gave her, and this is my second great takeaway, that get you ready position that he put his young players in, right? Freshmen, he would put them in at game point straight off the bench. And what that did to make every player stay engaged, right? Because you never knew when you were going to get put in. What a lesson that teaches us about about leadership and how we can draw people in, but also it allows you to build depth because if you don't know when you're going to be pulled in, you're going to be fully engaged. You're going to be learning the process at all times. She said it was yes, it was uncomfortable when that call came and that she was placed in the game. But by the way, she had that great line, right? Uncomfortable is where growth happens. Really powerful. Learned a lot there. But then the third really great takeaway for me was this idea that you have to refuse to use the words cannot. What are you saying you cannot do? Why? Let's be honest. What's being asked of you is just a new experience, you know. And I loved her line. People say they cannot when they have not yet. And so don't use, if you take that out of the lexicon, if you take that off the table within your team, it requires you to talk more about pivoting, what you're going to do next as a result. Powerful, powerful content. I learned so much. I enjoyed the day. I hope you did too. But please, if you'd leave a comment on the video to let me know your favorite part, I love reading your feedback and I love responding as well. I had a great day today. I hope you did too. I appreciate you. These are going to be all the outtakes in the world right here. Sorry, Gmo.